Welcome to Andy's Garage. I'm Andy Phillips. Today I'm going to show you how to replace the starter on a GM Trailblazer. Now this is the 5.3 liter V8, but the same process should be similar on any of the GM 5.3 liter V8 engines used in the other SUVs and trucks that they put it in. So let's go ahead and get started. To complete this, these are the items that you're going to need. First of all, you're obviously going to need a replacement starter. You can pick those up anywhere online, automotive stores. Prices vary. Now, if you're going through an automotive store, a lot of times you'll get a little bit of cash back for the core when you take that back, but you are paying a higher dollar. So wherever you want to choose to get it, it's up to you. You are going to need some hose pliers. These are very, very helpful when you're trying to get into those tight spots. I have a medium and a small. You also need articulating or a flexible ratchet. You'll need that. You'll need a regular ratchet, some extension arms for the ratchet. I have a 12 and a 6-inch. You're going to need a 15 millimeter socket, a 13 millimeter socket, and an 8 millimeter socket. And then a breaker bar is not a bad idea to have that on hand for those tight bolts. Some of the bolts on the starter, depending how long it's been in there, can be very tight. And what I don't have shown here, but if you can have it, will make your life a little easier, is a mallet in case you need to bang the crossbar loose, connecting there in the frame, and then also an impact wrench or a pneumatic or an electric ratchet is helpful, but not needed, but it is helpful. So these are the items here. Now first I want to show you a quick indication that your starter is bad. Obviously the big one would be the car won't start, but that could also be other things. It could be your battery, alternator, other things like that. So if we put the key in, we're going to turn it, and we'll see here that the voltage actually doesn't look bad. And now when we turn the key, you hear that? One click. Usually if it's your battery or your alternator, it'll kind of be like like you'll kind of have like multiple clicks, but most of the time, if you get one like this, go ahead and listen. Just every time you turn the key, one click but no crank. A lot of times that is your starter. But just to kind of do the process of elimination, let's test the battery, make sure it's not the battery. The voltage was looking good as we saw here, but let's go ahead and put a voltmeter on it, and let's see what the voltage is on the battery itself. Check the battery. And the battery, it's looking good. So we know the battery's fine. And the alternator, so that is definitely putting us in the direction of the starter. First thing you want to do is disconnect the battery, so we'll go ahead and take off positive terminal, set it off to the side. You don't have to do the ground one too. I like to just disconnect everything, just in case that one swings into place right here and gets a little bit of juice into it. So I just take both off. Another thing you're going to need is you're going to need to jack the vehicle up, as you can see here. But you want to make sure that you play it safe. You want to make sure you have jack stands under the vehicle as well. Don't just be relying on the jack, but you'll need the clearance to be able to get under there. So this is our passenger side. This is your catalytic converter. Here's your upstream O2 sensor. If you come here and now turn around and look up, it's kind of a tight fit. Another poor design on this GM vehicle. And right up there is your starter. So if we head right here, that's your starter. And let's see. If we slide here, you'll see there's your two bolts. So you have a bolt here, and you have another one there holding those up. And those are 13 millimeter bolts. And then you'll be able to see your solenoid is up on the top, but it has the connection going in. We can't see it from here, but the connection to the solenoid is up top. So what we'll do is we will lower it and then disconnect it at that point. But you can see the tight gap we have right here. You're not going to get that through. So you have to take off this frame support right here, and that's held on you have 3 15mm bolts on this side, and if we come over onto that side, you have the same thing, 3 there, but then you also have 2 here on the bottom. So you need to remove those 2, those 3, and then headed here on the passenger side, the same thing. You can see the bolts coming through right there holding it on. So we're going to remove a total of 10 15mm bolts, and then that will remove this support, and that'll give us the access we need in here to be able to get to the starter and pull it through and put the new one through. The outer bolt can be a little tricky. As you can see here, you don't have much space to work with. You're hitting part of the frame, and so you just got to be patient. Should be able to, there we go. And the bottom ones are off as well. Now that we've loosened this crossbar, we can bring it down, and we can now slide it out of the way, and that'll give us the access we need to pull the starter out and put the new one in. And now we can come through here. There's the starter, the 2 13mm bolts, right up, one there that we saw earlier. And you can see everything now connected. Now, some people recommend removing this crossbar. That's a pain in the neck to do. So I was going to remove it, but I found that if I just slid it out of the way, that was good enough to give me the access that I needed. So let's go ahead and put the extension on. We're going to use probably a 12-inch extension to go up in there to get those 13mm off so we can pull that starter out. Connect here. Now sometimes these can be on very tight. You're going to have to put a lot of muscle into it if you're not using an impact wrench to break that seal. This one's an easier one to get to. The other one, and we'll head over there in a minute. This one here is a little trickier, so we're going to have to try to weasel our way up there, but it's also a very tight fit. So if you have a thin socket that doesn't have a very thick walls to it, it makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to remove this one, and then we'll be back to do the other one. An easy way is to go in between, and I'll show you those 2 lines right there, but be very careful and just take your extension, put it right through it, and then you get a clear shot there of that bolt. So let's see if we can get that one off. Hold on. We got that second bolt finally. That's a tight one. If you have a breaker bar or an impact wrench, highly recommended because they can be seized on pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and then we'll be able to drop the old starter and then get the new one in place. Getting a look up there, you can see where the 2 bolts were. So now, get our hand up here. You see that's nice and loose. We'll pull that out gently. There we go. There we go. It's coming out. Pull that. Kind of twist it a little bit to pull it. So what I did is I kind of rotated it slightly so it'll slide out. Just drop it out here. It's very tight. Just got to use patience, but you can see it right there. We still need to disconnect the one cable there on the other end of the starter as well, so keep that in mind. I rotated the starter a little bit so you can see it, but you have your solenoid here, and there's the other wire connecting there to the back of it. I believe that's an 8mm nut, so we'll have to take that off. You also have this little heat shield right here that I'm going to pop off. We'll bring that down first, that way it'll fit through properly. But there it is right up in there. And then what I'm hoping is that we can fit it right through this gap here where we slid the support, this bar off to the side. We should be able to bring it right through this opening right here. So let me get that heat shield off, and then we can slide it down. All right, here's the shield. The challenge is turning it enough to get it to fit through this gap right here, right here. I was able to flip the starter in an upright position right here, so that way we can see the back of the solenoid. To the left here on the screen is an 8mm nut which holds the ignition switch going to it, and to the right of it is a 13mm nut holding the 12-volt power. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those in this position. I found that easier to get to it here from the bottom. Some people say to do it while it's still in place by removing the passenger tire, but I found that's a little too tight of a spot to get into, so let's go ahead and remove this now. The easiest way I found is if you put your hand up here through where your oil filter is, you can stabilize this, and at the same time you can bring your other hand in with the wrench. In this case we're using the 8mm, and then you can hold that in order to loosen those. So since I have to hold the camera I can't show that, but that's how I'm going to loosen all of these. We're going to bring my left hand in through the other opening to hold the solenoid in place. Use the right hand with the correct wrenches to loosen those and get those off. Now that we've removed this one, now we're going to take this one off here. This one you don't have to worry about because that stays connected to the starter. But this is the next one that we're going to take off here to the other harness, and then we'll be able to slide it off. And then when we install it, just make sure that you remember which ones go where, so you're putting things in a proper place. And that one comes off with a 13mm. The first one was an 8mm. Because we have the starter kind of lodged in there pretty good to where it's not going to move. So we have, let's see here, there we go. There we go. I think I can probably get it by hand. I think we've loosened it enough. See if I can come around the other way. There's better access that way. Here we go. And just to show you where I'm coming in through, it's right here, through that opening in the pan. You can get your arm right through here, and you actually have pretty good access to the starter. So we take this off, and we can slide that off, and then hopefully get this starter out of here. There we go. Slide that off, and let's see if we can get it out. Pulling it in here through the back, see if that'll work better. To work it down, you can kind of see the space that we have to work with is not the best. Okay, I think we might be getting it. Now, you can see right up here, it's a little bit tight. I know some mechanics recommend raising the engine and stuff a little bit, but I'm trying to avoid that if possible and just get it out with what I can. You can see what's happening. It's hitting here on this ledge, but if we can clear that, we might be able to pull it. It's hitting a line. These lines here, they are in the way. They're actually connected, and I'll try to get up closer in there. They're in that little bracket right there. So I'm going to pop them out so we can gently slide them off to the side. So that way we have more clearance. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and I think that'll give us the space needed to pull this down. All right, I've been able to work it down by loosening the bracket and taking these lines off that. I was able to move them like very, very little, but enough to give the clearance. You want to be careful. You don't want to put pressure on these and bend them, wind up damaging them and then having a leak. So now with that here, we have this space. We can pull this finally down. Here we go. Get the starter out of here. Gotta work it. See right there, we're hitting. Just gotta be patient and work it down. Very tight fitting through here, so you just gotta be patient, work it through, and then we should be able to pull that out. Not a lot of room to play with, unfortunately. All right, after working it through, we got it. So this is it. This is the starter out of a 5.3 liter V8 GM for the Chevy Trailblazer or for any of the 5.3 liter V8s. However, for the Trailblazer, I believe the process is more problematic because of just a pathetic design on the end of General Motors. It's crazy. I've replaced a lot of starters, and this is by far the hardest one. So anyway, this is it right here. And let's go ahead and get the new one so we can get ready to put that in. This is obviously the one coming out. This is the new one that's going to be going in. So we're going to go ahead now, get that one loaded in, connected, fire up the vehicle, and that should wrap this up. Now to put our new starter in, we're going to go ahead and slide it up the same way that we pulled the other one down. So we're going to work our way up through here, get it lodged up in there, and then we'll kind of move those lines out of the way a little bit and then push it straight up. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we cleared the first hurdle. You're just kind of working it through here. And now we got to get through here. And then I got to pull those lines back, so I'm going to need both hands to do that. But I'm going to move those lines gently, pushing them that way to give me about maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, so I can slide that up. Once I clear in there, then we can get up in there, connect the 12-volt power and the ignition switch wire, and then we can bolt it into place. All right. So we're up in there. I apologize for the angle, unfortunately, because I need both hands. So you're going to bring one hand up through that other access near the oil filter to pull it. Start bringing that up, and while we're doing that, we're going to push gently on those lines. You don't want to damage anything. So we're just going to push on them gently to give us enough clearance. Okay, just got to pass those lines. So now we can tuck it up in here. All right, perfect. So now let's adjust it so we can connect the two cables to it. We'll bolt those on, and then we'll be back so we can mount it and then wrap everything up. All right, to show you what I did, I had to disconnect the cables off the back because I had to pretty much take it, flip it. You don't have much room to work with, but I have it in position now where you can see right there it's ready to go into to connect to the flywheel. So I'm just going to rotate it to adjust the bolts. We'll attach that first, and I may wind up having to take off the wheel well liner on the passenger side to attach everything as far as the 12 volt and the ignition cable, but we'll figure that out. Right now I just want to get this thing in there. It's just very tight and hard to work with, so I'm just happy enough to just get that at least in there and bolted in. All right, I'll turn that a little bit. we've got it all. You can see there, it's in. We're ready to put the bolts in, and what I've done is I've tucked the cables, put them on the other side of these lines, that way they're not in the way, and that way we can just pull them up top and connect them at that point. I actually went ahead and put the left bolt in first, just because it's easier to do it that way. Now I didn't tighten it all the way because I want to add the other one in first, that way things don't get out of whack, and then we'll go ahead and work it in and tighten both of them all the way in. We'll go ahead and put it in first by hand, and then we'll get the ratchet. All right. Get that off. Everything is tightened. You can see the new starter in there. Let's go ahead and connect the cables to the back of it, and then we'll put the crossbar back in, put everything back together, and start it up. So I went ahead and removed the tire here. So now we have access right here, and I'll get a close-up. If we come in, you will see behind this flap, right back there. Let me see if you can see that. It's a little, there it is. That is the solenoid part of the starter, and we should be able to fish through there and connect those two wires and then call it a day. Now we'll fish the wires up and get to them through the opening there where we took the tire off, and then we'll be able to connect them to the back. So we have the ignition switch and then the power coming in. So let's get those connected. Highly recommended that you use some hose pliers, because what you can do is, as I did right there, is I went ahead and grabbed the lead, and from there I should be able to kind of put this onto that screw so we can bolt it on, and then we'll do the same with the ignition cable as well, but that makes it a lot easier if you use that. We have it put on, so now I'm going to take the pliers, push it on the rest of the way, so that way we can make the connection. So it's a little tricky to actually tighten the bolts going through there, so I'm just kind of reaching my arm up, as you can see here, and just tightening it with my finger. I can get it. Let's see, there's. Just do what I can. I mean, unfortunately, this goofy vehicle is so poorly designed for this kind of stuff. A job that normally would just take you 30 minutes or an hour is an all-day affair, so whatever. But anyway, so this is how I'm going to tighten it, and then we'll get a wrench in on the other side afterwards and give the final tightening on it. Highly recommended if you have one of these articulating ratchets that are flexible. Definitely use that, because what we're going to do is we're going to feed it in right here and work our way up to the top, and I'll show you where we're going to come through there, and then we can, it's going to be a slow process, but that's the best way to tighten it. Tighten the nuts. Okay, so we'll bring it up here, and there you see it. And from here, because of it being a flexible ratchet, we can work our way around it. However, as it just did there, it'll start to bend on you, so you got to be careful. But it's a long process, but there we go. And get that there. It's hard to see in there, so I apologize, but you can see we were able to tighten that one. So now we're going to put the 8mm in place, tighten that one, and then I'll be back. I'm not going to film all that, but that's what you have to work with. Unfortunately, at least what I found was the best method. Everything has been tightened up. We went ahead and tightened on the 8mm and the 13, holding on the 12-volt power to the starter as well as the ignition cable. If you have a pneumatic or an electric extended ratchet, that's not a bad idea to kind of go over and hit those nuts a little bit, because getting it in on that angle where we're kind of working our way past the CV axle and frame and all that stuff with this articulating, or that's what I call it, but flexible ratchet, you pretty much have it bent like that. So you're not getting as much as if you were using just a straight ratchet and tightening it. So I got it pretty tight, but then I went afterwards and hit it with a 90-degree attachment on my power drill, just to kind of make sure everything was tight. So it's not a bad idea to do that. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to go ahead and put the tire back on. Then we're going to head underneath and put the crossbar back on, lower the car, and then go ahead and start it up and test everything, and that'll wrap this up. One thing to keep in mind when putting the bolts back into the crossbar, if you didn't keep track when you took them out, these outer holes, that one and that one, they get the shorter bolt. The middle one and the two bottom ones, that gets the longer. So that's what we're going to be putting in right here. I just hand put them in, and then we'll hit it with the ratchet, and then we'll be back to tighten them up. Okay, so the car has been lowered, the crossbar has been put back on. Let's connect the battery, fire it up, and that'll wrap up this video. I went ahead and reconnected the battery, so now that's good to go. Let's hop inside the vehicle, fire it up, and see if everything works good. Here we go. Great, fired up right away. So this wraps up this video on how to replace the starter on a Chevy Trailblazer with the 5.3 liter V8 engine. The same process is very similar to any of the other General Motors 5.3, or I believe also the 6.0 liter engines as well. It's just the Trailblazer is a little bit quirky with the engineering. You have to remove the crossbar. Some of the other ones you have a little more access, but that pretty much wraps up this video. I hope that this video was informative for you. I hope it helped you out with any project you're working on with your starter on your Trailblazer. As always, I appreciate all the support, so please like the video, subscribe to this channel, and if you have any questions, please send me any comments. I would love to hear from you. I'll see you next time.